Unfortunately, a lot of our lettuce is loaded with microscopic worms. So one of the things that we have done as a practice, individuals, and we're trying to tell you as people who are coming to see us and trying to be as healthy as possible, is to get into the habit of taking all your produce with a fourth of a cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide in a gallon of reversed osmosis water, RO water, or distilled water, and soak everything. So all the produce you see here today has already been soaked 15 minutes and then blotted dry, and so the hydrogen peroxide will remove the pesticides and the parasites and just the grime and the dirt, the bacteria. Unfortunately, we've had an increased incidence of a lot of bacteria that's been in our food, whether it was cantaloupes out of Colorado or spinach somewhere or strawberries somewhere. So this is really preventative, and I don't want you to become discouraged with trying to get well and as healthy as you possibly can be. What I want you to do is be preventative in how you prepare. And for me, it's just a habit now. When I shop, I bring everything into my home and I soak everything. We do sell medical food grade hydrogen peroxide at 35% at the office. It has to be in the fridge. And it is so potent that if you spread a little on your finger, it would burn. So it would only be a tablespoon of medical food grade at 35% in a gallon of water. So you just I'll throw the radishes and the celery in and then put the timer on for 15 minutes, and then I'll put it out and blot it dry on paper towels, and then I might put in my pears and apples and maybe some carrots, and then my water still looks okay, so I might take that out and I'll put my romaine lettuce, and then all of a sudden the water's terrible. So I'm going to clean the whole water and put some more in, and then I'll bring in my next batch, my spinach, and then it's dirty again. So that's kind of how I do it, and I make it a habit that I have the time after I shop to put it all in my Ziploc bags back in my fridge, so that when I want to be spontaneous and eat something, it's already cleaned. Because the tendency would be, oh, I didn't clean that. So for me, it's just a habit. After I shop, I come home and I do it. So I'm not trying to be icky, I'm just trying to make you informed, because this is incredibly dense, nutrient-rich food, and I want it to be the purest and the most healthiest, and that's the way that we can ensure it as individuals, for ourselves and for our families. So with that, I have been into juicing probably over the last year or so, and I started with Jack LaLanne juicers, and I've killed 2 of them. And just like we did at our juicing workshop last year, how it started coming out of the engine and all over, that's what I did. But when you're just starting, it's a good juicer. And I'm going to tell you why. Because maybe you're kind of going into this going, I'm not really sure, and I don't want to make a big investment. And so for that particular individual that wants to test the water and say, am I willing to do this, I'm going to make a little bit of an investment in time and money. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to tell you to get it from Bed Bath & Beyond. If they don't have it, go to Costco, because I kept saving the receipt in the box. It was in my garage. So the minute I broke it, then it went. Now, my issue with a low-end juicer is you have to be patient. And if you cram things in, you're going to override the engine. And those lower-end, lower-priced juicers can't handle it. So you've really got to do the cutting ahead of time. So you cut your carrots up and you cut your apples into 4s or 8s. You just have to do it. And you can't be impatient. And the other thing that I found that's critical is you have to put a juicy piece of produce in with a dry piece. So for instance, I would have to put in cucumbers along with the romaine lettuce. Or I'd have to put in the pears with the Swiss chard. Or I'd have to put in apples with the spinach. Or I'd have to put the oranges in with the dandelion root, which is really good for livers. So anyways, you had to rotate, otherwise the romaine lettuce would get all stuck in there and it was just a mess. So part of the nuances of juicing is to become familiar with the equipment that you're using and to be patient with what you're introducing. So today what I'm going to do is get my Breville, and I'm going to do a juice from our platters that has a recipe. And then what I'm going to do is call on all of you, and we're going to work with the extra produce and you're going to make the juice, and you're each going to tell me what to put in. And why am I doing that? Because I need you to know that it doesn't matter what you have on hand. It could be a creative endeavor, and you feel like juicing, but you need to use what you have in your fridge, okay? Because maybe somebody came home and took something out and you didn't know it, and you were counting on it for the recipe. That doesn't mean it's spoiled. It just means that you have to be creative and inventive, okay? Now, when we originally did this, Janet and I, about a year and a half ago, we had a nutritionist come to Janet's house, and it was really entertaining because we have different tastes. So the juice would come out just like she did, and she didn't like it. And I'm like, okay, so she added salt, and Janet goes, that's perfect. I really like salt on that. And I'm like, well, who would have thought she needed salt? Or me, I wanted a little bit more sweeter, so I'm like, oh, I need sweet. Okay, so you'll have different members of your family that maybe want a certain kind of composition, texture, taste, so we have to honor that, okay? So, anyways, so this is a new juicer for me, and I really, really like it. And what is unique is it has a dial over here to the side that tells me if I'm going to use a carrot, I need to be on a 5. But if I'm going to be on a pear, I can be on a 2. And it tells me the level of grinding that I can do, okay? What I'm going to ask, because I want a really easy cleanup, is that I put a bag in here to grab all of my compost. And if I'm a gardener, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go put this out of my compost pile. Or if I'm raising bunnies like Patty is in the back, I can give it to the bunnies, okay? So it has a dual purpose here. And then it's an easy cleanup, okay? So this is going to be my chute that goes on down, and Janet, I'm going to borrow something here.
Take what you need.
Because I forgot my picture. Okay, so this recipe, it calls for green apples. I have Granny Smith apples. It calls for carrots. It calls for kale. It calls for ginger, fresh ginger. And this is what it looks like, but I've cut it already up, and it's wonderful for cardiovascular tonic. It's great to reverse arteriosclerotic plaque. And then I have fresh basil here, which is to die for. So all of this is cleaned. And because it can be a little tart, I'm going to add some strawberries, okay? And then depending on the taste, I might want a little lemon. So I've doubled the recipe, and I'm just going to turn this on and start grinding. And I'm not adding any additional water. So on the kale, I'm going to take it off, but I don't have to, but I just like to do that. And I protect my face from, incoming. So
You can smell it. You smell it.
I'm going to move this so you can see the color juice. Notice I'm not cramming that down. How many of you have heard about the Environmental Working Group, EWG? Anybody? Okay, they've done studies on the most highly pesticide produce that is out there, and you have a handout here. of all the fruits and vegetables, and the ones that are the worst are the ones, the lower numbers have more pesticides. Those are the ones that you must be buying organic if at all possible, okay? So when you're shopping and you want to be aware for your family, those are the ones that you want to go with. And then there's an article here about a shopper's guide from the Environmental Working Group, and all the information that you need to know, that the Clean 15, and so just be aware of that. I didn't want to compete with that noise. Smell it? Yeah. There's a little bit of ginger. Now there are some produce that's very high in sugar, like beets and carrots, and if you have an issue with you don't process sugar well, it would be a good idea that you don't do a lot of beets and carrots in one particular juicing round, and that you would dilute it out with different other vegetables or fruits. And if you find that you have sugar issues, more vegetables than fruit would be highly suggestible, okay? Okay, my composting is getting really full over here, so I would ask that you just pay attention to that. So I'm going to look at that and change out my bag, and it's relatively heavy, so I can put that in my composting pile.
Or my bunnies can have it.
Or your bunnies can have it. Let me grab another bag.